He was a blind Marine, forgotten by his country, haunted by the ghosts of a war that stole his sight and his peace. The dog they called too dangerous to live was about to be put down. But when the soldier spoke just one word, the animal froze, not in fear, but in recognition. What connected them went beyond training, beyond memory. It was something holy. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. The late morning sun shimmered across the red dust of Prescott, Arizona, where the desert air hummed with cicadas and the faint smell of dry pine drifted from the surrounding hills. It was the kind of day where heat and silence merged into one. And in that silence, at the edge of town, stood a low, sun-bleached compound surrounded by chain-link fences, the Prescott K-9 Rehabilitation Unit, a place where broken dogs were sent to be forgotten. Inside one of the outer kennels, Blitz, a 6-year-old German shepherd, paced in sharp, measured steps, his claws tapping against the cracked cement. He was large, nearly 80 pounds of muscle and scar tissue, with a coat of dark sable and black that shimmered like burnt copper in sunlight. His left ear drooped slightly from an old wound, and a thin scar cut diagonally across his muzzle. His amber eyes were deep and calculating, not wild, but haunted, the kind of gaze that had seen too much. Trainers said he had the eyes of a soldier who never came home. Once deployed in the Middle East under a private security contractor, Blitz had survived 2 blasts and lost 3 handlers. He had bitten 3 officers since his arrival here. No one dared to open his gate anymore. In the observation shed, Captain Raymond Harlow leaned against a steel desk, arms crossed. The years carved deep into his sun-browned face. Late 50s, thick shoulders from a lifetime of training men and dogs, and hair turned silver under the Arizona light. Once he had been called the Dog Whisperer of Kandahar, a legend in his field. Now his eyes had dulled to weary pragmatism. "We're out of time," he said, voice low and gravelly. "Behavioral rehab failed. He won't take food, won't respond to voice or touch. He's a loaded gun without a safety." Across from him stood Emily Hart, 28, the youngest officer in the unit. She was tall and slender, with freckles dusting her sun-kissed skin, and auburn hair tied back in a loose braid that escaped her cap. There was a quiet defiance in her green eyes, the look of someone who still believed in the good she couldn't always see. Emily had grown up on her family's farm in Wyoming, around border collies and cattle dogs that bit before they trusted. Her mother once told her, "You can't fix fear with commands, Em. You fix it with time." That belief had become her compass. "Just one more day," she said softly. "He's been through too much to end it like this." Captain Harlow gave her a long stare, the kind that came from years of disappointment. "3 bites, Hart. 1 man hospitalized. You want me to gamble a 4th? "I want you to remember what he's been through," she replied, her tone calm but edged with conviction. "He's not angry. He's scared. There's a difference." "In this place," Harlow muttered, "fear kills faster than teeth." He turned away, ending the conversation, but Emily lingered. Through the observation window, she saw Blitz stop pacing and lift his head toward the sunlight streaming through the wire roof. Something in his stance, proud yet fragile, made her chest tighten. It wasn't rage in that body. It was waiting for something that might never return. Around noon, The hum of an approaching truck broke the stillness. The guard at the front gate buzzed in a visitor. Luke Bennett stepped out, boots crunching against gravel. He wore a faded Marine Corps T-shirt, khaki pants creased with precision, and a pair of dark glasses that hid the damage time had carved into him. 35 years old, skin bronzed from sun exposure, beard neatly trimmed though slightly uneven. A man who lived between order and loss. In his right hand, a white cane tapped the earth with practiced rhythm. His left hand brushed against the gate, feeling its warmth. Though blind, Luke moved with quiet purpose, as if the world around him spoke in sounds only he could hear. Emily met him near the entrance. She'd been expecting a volunteer from Phoenix, not this silent soldier who seemed to carry the desert on his back. "Sergeant Bennett?" she asked, extending a hand. "Just Luke now," he said, his voice deep, slow, deliberate, the kind of voice that carried weight without effort. "A friend from Camp Pendleton told me you've got a dog here nobody can reach." Emily hesitated. "And you think you can?" "I don't think anything," he said, turning his face toward her voice. "I just want to try." Captain Harlow appeared behind them, wiping dust from his sunglasses. "You must be the Marine," he said. "We're not running a charity, son. That dog's been through 3 trainers. Each ended worse than the last." Luke tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Then let me be the 4th." The captain studied him. Something in the man's tone, firm but not reckless, tugged at his curiosity. "You've got 1 hour," Harlow said. "After that, he's done, and if he bites, it's on you." Emily led Luke down the gravel path toward the kennels. The sun was relentless now, pouring gold over the metal cages, heating the air until it shimmered. "He's in the last run," she said quietly. "Big shepherd, sable coat, 6 years old, name's Blitz." Luke nodded, counting each step, the soft tap of his cane echoing between the fences. When they reached the final gate, Emily stopped. Blitz was already standing at the front, tail still, ears forward. His amber eyes locked on the stranger who faced him without sight. "He sees me," Luke murmured. "He sees everyone," Emily replied, half amused, half wary. "Then why hasn't he moved?" "Because he's deciding whether to kill you." Luke smiled faintly. "I've met worse judges." He stepped closer, the cane folded at his side. He didn't kneel, didn't reach out. "My name's Luke Bennett," he said softly, his tone steady as wind through canyon rock. "United States Marine Corps." The dog didn't growl, didn't blink, only breathed, slow, heavy, deliberate. Luke continued, voice low. "I've been in places where the ground shook and the sky burned. I know the sound of fear when it hides inside the bones. You do too, don't you?" Blitz took one cautious step forward, nose brushing the air between them. Emily's breath caught. The world around her felt suspended. Even the cicadas fell silent. Then the impossible happened. Blitz sat down. Luke smiled faintly. "Yeah," he whispered. "You remember?" From the observation deck, Captain Harlow watched through mirrored glass, his arms frozen at his sides. He had seen 1,000 dogs, 1,000 handlers, but nothing like this. "He sat," Emily whispered. Luke lowered his hand until it hovered an inch above Blitz's head, feeling the heat radiate through the air. "Me too," he said, as if answering some silent question. For the first time in years, the compound was quiet, not the silence of emptiness, but of understanding. When Luke finally stepped back, Blitz didn't lunge or snarl. He simply stayed still, eyes following the Marine as though recognizing an old ghost finally returned home. Emily glanced at Luke. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing," Luke answered, smiling faintly. "Sometimes silence speaks the loudest." That evening, as the sun dipped low over the desert and painted the hills with molten gold, Emily stood at the gate long after Luke had left. Blitz lay quietly inside his kennel, eyes open, staring toward the direction the blind man had gone. She had seen obedience before. She had seen fear. But this was neither. This was remembrance. And though she couldn't explain it, she knew the story between man and dog had only just begun. Morning rolled over Prescott like a slow tide of light, painting the desert gold. The air was warm but softer than yesterday, heavy with the scent of sage and sand. Inside the K9 compound, quiet lingered like a held breath. The handlers walked more carefully that day, whispering about the blind Marine who had faced the devil dog and walked away untouched. To them, it was a rumor born of sympathy. To Emily Hart, it was the beginning of something she couldn't explain and couldn't stop thinking about. She arrived early, her uniform slightly wrinkled, a paper cup of coffee in hand. The sun caught strands of her auburn hair as she walked toward Kennel 12. Blitz was awake, lying still in the patch of sunlight near the door, his head resting on his paws. He looked calmer now, almost regal, as if the chaos inside him had found a moment of truce. When Emily stepped closer, his eyes followed her every movement, but not with aggression, with recognition. "Morning, soldier," she murmured, setting her coffee aside. "You waiting for him?" The dog's tail brushed the floor once, faint but deliberate. It made her smile. Behind her, footsteps approached. "You talking to him or yourself?" Captain Raymond Harlow appeared, coffee thermos in one hand, expression unreadable. His sun-worn face carried the shadow of sleeplessness, and his jaw was unshaven, the rare crack in his iron discipline. "You hear the phones?" he asked. "Since yesterday, my inbox looks like a zoo. Everyone wants to know how a blind vet calmed our most dangerous K9. "Maybe they should come see for themselves," Emily replied. "He's different now." Harlow grunted. "Different doesn't mean fixed, but—" He paused, the corners of his mouth twitching in reluctant admiration. "I'll admit, I didn't think Bennett would last 10 seconds. "You think he'll come back?" she asked. Harlow's eyes narrowed. "He left his ID badge at the gate. That tells me he plans to." He was right. Around 9, the guard buzzed the intercom. "Marine's back." Luke Bennett walked across the compound yard with the same deliberate pace as before. He wore the same faded shirt, though his boots were dustier, and there was something steadier in his step, as if yesterday had given him purpose. Blitz was already standing by the gate when Luke approached, tail stiff but ears forward. "Guess he remembers you," Emily said, meeting Luke halfway. "He remembers a lot of things," Luke replied. "That's the problem." He turned his head slightly toward her voice. "Do you have a quiet place to work with him?" She hesitated, then nodded toward the indoor training hall, an old hangar of concrete walls and flickering fluorescent lights. It smelled faintly of rubber mats, bleach, and ghosts. "It's not fancy," she said, "but it's private." Luke followed her steps, counting under his breath. Emily opened the gate, and Blitz walked beside them without leash or command, an obedience that made even Harlow glance up from his office window. Inside, Luke set his hand on Blitz's shoulder. "You trust me?" he asked softly. Blitz's ear flicked, his chest rising and falling. Emily stood near the corner, notebook in hand, pretending to record data, but really studying the way they moved together, the blind man and the scarred dog, circling each other in silence. Then Luke whispered something that froze her. "Bleib." The word hung in the air, strange and heavy. Blitz obeyed instantly, lowering into a sit. Emily blinked. "That's German?" Luke tilted his head. "Sounded right. I don't know why I said it." His brow furrowed. "It just came." Emily stepped forward. "Where did you learn that word?" "I didn't," he said simply, "but he knows it." Blitz's gaze had softened, tail brushing the mat. Luke continued in a half-whisper, his voice carrying both wonder and unease. "He's not reacting to my tone. He's reacting to memory." Emily looked at him carefully. "Whose memory?" He smiled faintly. "Maybe both of ours." For the next hour, Emily watched as Luke tested more commands. "Sitz." "Fast." "Bleib." Each word rolled off his tongue like something buried but familiar. Blitz responded every time, precise and calm. "This can't be coincidence," she murmured. "These are combat commands used in European units, not standard U.S. training." Luke turned toward her voice. "You think he's foreign bred?" "Or reassigned," she said. "Maybe part of a Black Ops contract. Those dogs vanish from records all the time." "And the handlers?" Luke asked. Emily hesitated. "Sometimes. Them too." The door creaked open suddenly. Lieutenant Gus Moreno entered, short, stocky, mid-60s, with sun-darkened skin and a bristled gray mustache that made him look perpetually unimpressed. He had served as Harlow's deputy for years, a man known for his sarcasm and devotion to rules. "What the hell's going on here?" he barked, his voice raspy from too many cigarettes. Emily straightened. "Behavioral observation, sir." Moreno squinted. "Looks like dog whispering to me. This the blind guy?" Luke turned toward the voice, unfazed. "Used to be sighted," he said dryly. Moreno grunted, stepping closer to Blitz. "This one nearly took my hand off last month." He reached forward cautiously, but Blitz didn't move. Instead, the dog looked at Luke, waiting. "Well, I'll be damned," Moreno muttered. "Guess the monster found his priest." When Moreno left, the silence that followed was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Luke leaned back against the wall, exhaling slowly. "He's not dangerous, you know. He's just been waiting for someone who speaks his language." Emily closed her notebook. "Then maybe we should find out where he learned it." That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, she sat in her small office surrounded by files, hundreds of pages marked redacted. The old computer hummed, and the air smelled of dust and coffee. She typed Operation Snow Veil into the police database, cross-referencing military records and canine registries. No matches. Then she noticed something odd. Blitz's chip ID had been added only 3 months ago. Before that, nothing. No country, no handler, no birth record. A ghost dog. She leaned back, frowning. "Who were you before this?" Her phone buzzed. A message from Captain Harlow. "Don't dig too deep, Hart. Some files bite harder than the dogs." She ignored it. Curiosity had already taken root, and she was too stubborn to stop. When she returned to the kennel later that night, the compound was quiet, bathed in moonlight. Luke was still there, sitting cross-legged just outside Blitz's cage. He didn't hear her at first. His hand rested on the dog's back, head tilted as if listening to something only he could hear. "You ever get the feeling," he said suddenly, not turning, "that some memories aren't lost? They're locked Emily stepped closer, her heart tightening. "And what happens when you open them?" Luke smiled faintly. "Depends who's holding the key." In the dark, Blitz lifted his head, ears twitching. Somewhere far off, thunder rumbled, though the desert sky was clear. Emily looked up uneasily, a chill running through her despite the heat. "Storm season's months away," she murmured. Luke's hand stilled. Then maybe that wasn't weather. And in the distance, unseen beyond the fences, a black SUV rolled to a silent stop beneath the ridge, its engine ticking softly in the night. The next morning rose sharp and hot, the desert air shimmering as though the sun itself was holding its breath. But inside the Prescott K-9 Rehabilitation Unit, the mood was different. Uneasy, cautious, like everyone was waiting for something they couldn't name. Emily Hart had barely slept. Her computer screen had burned long into the night with redacted reports and missing files. She hadn't told Captain Harlow or Lieutenant Moreno what she found. She wasn't sure she could explain it without sounding paranoid. Now, as she walked across the gravel toward Kennel 12, her boots crunching rhythmically, she noticed new tire tracks cutting through the sand, fresh, deep, and wide. Someone had come in after hours. Blitz stood alert inside his cage, tail still, gaze fixed toward the distant hills. His fur shimmered in the morning light, catching flecks of gold, and his ears twitched to sounds only he seemed to hear. "You sense it too, don't you?" Emily whispered, resting a hand on the mesh. Blitz's head turned slightly, not toward her voice but toward the parking lot behind her. A dark SUV idled near the gate, its tinted windows reflecting the sunlight like mirrors. A man stepped out. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, lean with an air of precise authority. His hair was trimmed close, the kind of military cut that spoke of routine rather than style. His suit was dark, expensive, but functional, the kind you wear when you want to blend power with anonymity. His jawline was clean-shaven, though the lines beside his mouth betrayed years of silence and duty. Agent Cole Voss, the embroidered badge on his belt, confirmed it. His gray eyes were sharp, analytical, and cold enough to make Emily's stomach tighten. He didn't walk so much as measure the ground beneath his steps. "Agent Voss," Emily greeted carefully, adjusting her cap. "Can I help you?" "You already have," he said evenly, his voice smooth but clipped, the kind of voice that didn't waste syllables. "I'm here about the shepherd." Her pulse quickened. "Blitz?" "Yes, the dog you've been working with." He looked past her toward the kennels, his gaze moving like radar. "I need to see him." "I'm sorry, sir, but access requires authorization." He smiled faintly, the expression not reaching his eyes. "I don't need authorization. I'm the one who wrote the clearance levels you're quoting." Emily didn't move. "Then maybe you should talk to Captain Harlow first." "I already did," he said, stepping closer. "He's escorting some men off the perimeter." Her heart thudded. "Men? What men?" "Federal contractors," he said. "They're transferring sensitive assets." Emily's mouth went dry. "Blitz isn't an asset. He's a dog." Voss studied her, eyes narrowing as though he were dissecting her defiance. "Miss Hart, some dogs are born, others are made." Before she could answer, a familiar voice called, out from behind them, calm, low, and unwavering. "And some are just better judges of character." Luke Bennett approached, his boots moving in sure rhythm. Sweat beaded along his brow beneath the Arizona sun, but his movements carried a quiet strength. He wore the same shirt as before, though the fabric had begun to fade at the shoulders, and a small silver tag hung from his neck. catching the light. Blitz barked once, not in warning, but in greeting. Voss turned. "You must be the Marine." Luke tilted his head. "You must be the bureaucrat." A brief silence passed, charged with something that wasn't hostility, more like two predators circling for intent. Voss stepped forward. "This dog is part of a classified defense project called Operation Snow Veil. He's not supposed to exist, and neither, apparently, are you." Luke frowned. "Funny, I've been alive the whole time." "You were presumed KIA 6 years ago," Voss said flatly, "and according to our records, so was the handler assigned to K9 Unit BZK-17, Blitz. I'm guessing that's not a coincidence." Emily's breath caught. "You mean Luke and Blitz were partners?" Voss ignored her. "I'm here to remove the animal before this circus attracts any more attention. The last thing this country needs is another viral video of classified property wagging its tail." Luke's tone hardened. "You can't take him." "It's not your call, Sergeant." Luke's lips curved faintly. "Then maybe it's his." Blitz stepped between them, shoulders squared, a deep growl resonating from his chest. It wasn't wild, it was controlled, deliberate, protective. Voss froze, assessing the distance, one hand instinctively brushing the inside of his jacket where a holstered pistol sat. "You trained him well," he said coldly. "I didn't," Luke replied, "but whoever did, they taught him right from wrong." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Blitz's growl faded, replaced by a heavy silence. Voss lowered his hand, voice steady. "I'll be back with a warrant." "Bring God while you're at it," Luke said. "You'll need him." When Voss left, Emily turned to Luke, her heart pounding. "What does he mean? You were dead?" Luke exhaled slowly, running a hand through his short, dark hair. "I was in Syria. There was an explosion. I remember sand, fire, someone screaming in German, then nothing. When I woke up in a hospital, they told me I was lucky to be alive. Maybe they were half right." "And Blitz?" she asked. "He shouldn't remember me," Luke said softly, kneeling to touch the shepherd's collar. "But he does. Every command, every move, like we never left that desert." Emily crouched beside him, eyes full of worry and wonder. "If this Operation Snow Veil was erased and you both survived—" "Then someone's trying to keep it that way," Luke finished. They both turned as Blitz suddenly lifted his head, ears twitching. The dog's attention snapped toward the far side of the compound where the fence line met the open desert. Dust rose in the distance, the faint shimmer of movement. Luke's hand tightened on the collar. "He sees something." Emily squinted into the glare. "Could be just a patrol car." Luke shook his head. "No, that sound earlier. It wasn't thunder." Blitz growled low, eyes fixed on the horizon. A dark figure appeared for a split second behind the fence, too tall to be an animal, too still to be wind. Then it was gone. Emily whispered, "Did you see that?" Luke's voice was quiet, steady, but his jaw was clenched. "No, but he did." As they stood in the heat, Blitz began to pace again, the same measured rhythm as before, except now his gaze wasn't haunted by memory. It was focused on something coming. Far beyond the hills, a second SUV joined the first, glinting black under the desert sun, and this time their engines didn't stop. By midday, the Prescott air shimmered under the blaze of the Arizona sun. The K9 compound looked ordinary from the road, quiet, still the kind of place no one noticed. But inside its fences, tension buzzed like static in the dry air. Luke Bennett stood near the main gate with Blitz sitting calmly beside him, the dog's head turning toward every sound that broke the silence. Emily Hart paced near the training yard, radio in hand, her freckles bright against the flush of heat. Captain Harlow had ordered a lockdown after spotting 2 black SUVs parked beyond the ridge that morning, and even Lieutenant Moreno had traded sarcasm for the tight, efficient tone of a man who smelled trouble. Inside the small command trailer, the old air conditioner rattled weakly as Harlow reviewed a satellite feed on his cracked laptop. His face was drawn, every crease deepened by sunlight and fatigue. Emily entered, setting a folder on the desk. "The vehicles haven't moved," she said. "They're just sitting out there." Harlow grunted. "That's what worries me." His voice was rough, steady, like gravel under boots. "If they were feds, they'd have come through the gate. If they were media, they'd have cameras. They're waiting." Luke appeared at the doorway, one hand on the frame, his blind eyes scanning the air like radar. "They're not waiting," he said quietly. "They're listening." Blitz followed at his heel, fur glistening with sweat. Harlow looked up sharply. "Listening to what?" "Us," Luke replied, "and probably to him." He reached down to rest his palm on Blitz's neck. "They're tracking the dog." Moreno barged in next, a radio clipped to his shoulder, his face shiny with perspiration. "Sir, I got chatter from the sheriff's office. They say 2 men from Homeland passed through town asking about a Marine vet and a classified shepherd." He shot Luke a look. "You really like to stir the hornet's nest, don't you?" Before Luke could answer, the power flickered. The hum of the air conditioner died, replaced by the whisper of wind through cracked vents. Blitz's ears pricked, body tensing. "Generator's just cut," Emily said, glancing toward the window. "That's not random." From the yard came the low rumble of an engine. One of the SUVs had moved. Gravel spat beneath its tires as it rolled closer to the outer gate. The second vehicle followed, stopping at an angle that blocked the road. Harlow straightened, eyes narrowing. "Positions. Nobody fires unless I say." Emily grabbed her radio, her pulse quickening. Luke didn't move. "Let me talk to them," he said. "Not a chance," Harlow snapped. "They're not here for conversation." Luke's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "They won't talk to uniforms. They'll talk to me." Outside, the heat shimmered like a curtain between life and danger. 2 men stepped from the first SUV, both dressed in plain desert fatigues, no insignia, but their bearing screamed military. The lead one removed his sunglasses slowly, revealing pale eyes under a brow lined by years of command. He was in his 50s, tall, solidly built, with close-cropped silver hair and the posture of a man who had never once second-guessed an order. His name came unspoken to Luke's lips. "Colonel Adam Holt." Emily looked between them. "You know him?" Luke's jaw tightened. "I did." Holt's voice carried across the compound, firm and resonant. "Sergeant Bennett, step away from the animal." Blitz growled low, standing between Luke and the approaching men. Luke remained still. "You trained him for war, didn't you?" he called out. "Operation Snow Veil, Aleppo. The dog remembers." Holt's gaze hardened. "That operation never existed." "Then why do we both dream about it?" Luke shot back. The colonel's silence said enough. The second man beside him, Agent Daniel Reese, a younger operative in his late 30s with a clean face and cold precision, raised a small black device resembling a remote. "If you don't comply," he said, "we'll trigger the fail-safe." Emily's stomach dropped. "Fail-safe?" Luke's head turned sharply toward the sound. "You mean kill Switch." Holt's tone remained even. "You were always too sentimental, Bennett. That dog was never meant to retire." The air tightened. Blitz let out a sharp bark, hackles rising. Luke stepped forward, voice steady but dangerous. "If you touch that device, Colonel, I swear—" Before he could finish, Holt lifted a hand. "Stand down, Reese." His eyes lingered on Luke with something almost like regret. "You don't understand what that animal carries. He's more than a war dog. He's evidence." "Evidence of what?" Emily demanded. "Of a program we were ordered to erase." Harlow had stepped out by now, pistol drawn but lowered. "You're trespassing on state property," he warned. Holt ignored him, his gaze locked on Luke. "You were supposed to die in Syria, you and the dog both. When that blast hit, Command decided it was cleaner that way. We couldn't have a handler walking around with classified neurological conditioning in his head." Emily's voice trembled. "Neurological what?" Luke went still, his throat tightening. "You turned handlers into code?" Holt's face didn't move. "We called it synchronization. Dog and man sharing reflex, memory, even language. You weren't just partners. You were linked." A silence fell so deep the desert wind itself seemed to pause. Blitz took a single step closer to Luke, his eyes searching the man's face. Emily swallowed hard. "That's why he understands the German commands," she whispered. Holt nodded once. "That's why he still remembers when you don't." Luke felt the ground tilt beneath him. Fragments of memory. Smoke, shouting, a child's cry, a German phrase echoing through static, surged like an undertow. He clenched his fists. "You used us like machines." "You volunteered," Holt said. "I've volunteered to save lives, not erase them." Harlow stepped forward, gun raised. "This ends now. You want the dog, you bring a court order." Reese smirked faintly. "We don't need paper for ghosts." Before Harlow could respond, Blitz barked sharply and turned toward the ridge. Another vehicle was approaching fast, throwing up a storm of dust. Holt's men pivoted instinctively, weapons half drawn. Luke's instincts flared too. Even blind, he could feel the danger approaching like heat. The car screeched to a halt. The door swung open and a woman stepped out, tall, mid-30s, sunburned, dressed in civilian khakis and a flannel shirt. Her dark hair was tied back messily, and her eyes, sharp, intelligent, and burning with defiance, scanned the scene like a hawk's. "Everyone lower your damn weapons!" she shouted. Holt stiffened. "Dr. Mara Keene." Emily blinked. "Who?" Holt's voice was taut. "Head of Behavioral Synchronization, Project Snow Veil." Mara looked straight at Luke. "If you want the truth, Sergeant, you'll come with me, because they're not here to recover the dog. They're here to erase what's left of you." Luke turned his face toward her voice, the sun hot against his skin. Behind him, Blitz's muscles tensed, ready. The colonel's men hesitated, waiting for the order to strike, and from somewhere deep beneath the compound, a faint hum began, mechanical, rhythmic, rising like a heartbeat buried in the desert floor. Luke whispered, "What did you turn on?" Mara's eyes met his. The past. The hum from beneath the desert floor grew louder, vibrating through the soles of their boots like a buried heartbeat. Dust trembled along the metal walls of the compound, and everyone, Luke, Emily, Harlow, Blitz, even Holt's armed men, paused as if the earth itself had just remembered something it wasn't supposed to. The air was heavy, almost electric. Blitz pressed closer to Luke, his body tense but silent, amber eyes flicking toward the source of the vibration. Dr. Mara Keene was already moving, her dark hair falling loose as she sprinted toward the back entrance of the command trailer. "They reactivated the mainframe," she said, breath short, voice sharp. "I thought it was buried years ago." Colonel Holt's eyes narrowed. "You told me it was destroyed." "I told you what I was ordered to," Mara snapped, "but command never destroys a weapon it can resurrect." She looked at Luke. "That's why you're still alive." Captain Harlow stepped forward, sweat rolling down his temple. "Would someone tell me what the hell is happening?" Mara stopped beside the steel door leading underground. "Project Snow Veil wasn't just about synchronization," she said. "It was about preservation, storing neural imprints. Every memory, every reflex, every fear the dog and handler shared was recorded in the core system. It was supposed to be a failsafe in case one of you didn't survive." Luke's voice was low, almost breaking. "You made copies of us." "Not copies," Mara said, eyes flicking to Blitz. "Echoes." The sound deepened, shifting from vibration to rhythm, mechanical, deliberate, like something awakening. Holt barked orders to his men. "Secure the perimeter. No one leaves until this is under control." But Luke wasn't listening. His hands clenched as fragments of memory bled through, a child crying, Blitz barking, explosions, flashes of Aleppo, the mission that never made the reports. He staggered slightly, gripping the table to steady himself. Emily moved closer, voice gentle. "Luke, breathe. You're here, not there." "I was never just here," he whispered. "Half of me never left that wall." Harlow holstered his weapon, finally realizing this wasn't a standoff. It was history, demanding to be heard. "If this system's waking up, can it be shut down?" Mara nodded grimly. "Yes, but the interface requires both halves of the link, handler and subject, one command to erase it permanently." She met Luke's sightless eyes. "That means you." Colonel Holt's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "You shut it down, and we lose everything. Data, control, evidence. Do you know how many billions this cost?" Mara glared at him. "How many lives did it cost, Adam?" The colonel's expression faltered, a crack in years of discipline. "I followed orders." "And now you'll watch them fall," she said, wrenching free. She led them down the narrow stairwell beneath the trailer. The air grew cooler, tinged with rust and ozone. Old fluorescent lights flickered on automatically as they descended into a long corridor, lined with cables and obsolete terminals. Dust floated like ash in the still air. At the far end stood a reinforced door, its surface etched with the faded emblem of a snowflake. Project Snow Veil. Luke paused before it, fingertips brushing the cold metal. Blitz pressed against his leg, whining softly. "Feels familiar," Luke murmured. "It should," Mara said quietly. "You died behind this door." She keyed a sequence into the control panel. The lock disengaged with a slow metallic hiss. Inside, the chamber glowed with the pale light of suspended monitors. In the center stood a single pod-like structure, glass fractured, wires exposed, and within it a frozen shadow of data pulsing faintly like a dying star. "That's it," Emily whispered. "The neural core," Mara replied. "Everything they took from you and him." Holt entered behind them, pistol drawn. "Step away," he ordered. "You can't destroy it. You'll destabilize the archive." Luke turned toward the sound of his voice. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. Reese appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable, gun raised toward Luke. "Sir?" he asked Holt, waiting for permission to fire. The colonel hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty cracked his iron composure. "Stand down," he said. Reese blinked. Sir? Stand. Down. Holt lowered his weapon slowly. I built soldiers out of ghosts, he said. Maybe it's time they rest. Mara moved to the console, typing commands with trembling hands. Luke, place your hand here, she instructed, pointing to a small biometric pad glowing blue. The system will recognize your neural pattern. You'll feel it. Try to reconnect. Luke nodded. If it does, then don't fight it. Just finish what they started the wrong way. He placed his palm on the pad. A hum filled the room, deep and resonant. Blitz stiffened beside him, ears flat, a low whine escaping his throat. On the monitor, 2 waveforms appeared, one human, one canine, pulsing in and out of sync. Slowly, they began to align. Luke's breath hitched. His body trembled as images flooded his mind. Not flashes this time, but clarity. Blitz pulling a child from rubble, Holt shouting orders, Mara crying into a headset. Then the explosion. Sand and blood, pain like fire, and finally, darkness. The hum built into a roar. Emily covered her ears, shouting, Luke, what's happening? He spoke through gritted teeth. We remember. The waveform reached perfect harmony, then began to flatten. Mara's fingers flew across the keys. You're wiping it! Luke smiled faintly. Not wiping, freeing. The lights flickered. Alarms wailed. Then suddenly, silence. The monitors went black. The neural core dimmed to nothing. Luke collapsed to his knees, Blitz immediately pressing against him. Emily rushed forward, kneeling beside them. Luke, talk to me. He exhaled slowly, head bowed, a faint smile forming. He's quiet, Luke whispered. For the first time, he's quiet. Holt holstered his gun, staring at the darkened core. It's done? Mara nodded. It's done. No more ghosts. Outside, the wind began to pick up, carrying the faint scent of rain, a rare gift in the desert. They emerged into the fading daylight, the sun soft behind streaks of silver cloud. Harlow stood by the gate, radio in hand. Power's back, and those SUVs? Gone. Emily looked toward Luke, who stood with Blitz sitting proudly beside him. What happens now? He smiled faintly, reaching down to touch the dog's head. Now, we live like men and dogs are supposed to. Free. Mara looked at the horizon. They'll come again. Then we'll be ready, Luke said. As the sun sank behind the mountains, the desert turned gold one last time. Blitz barked once, a sound not of warning, but of joy. The past had finally let them go. Far below the sands, in the silence where machines once hummed, a single light blinked faintly on the dead monitor, a heartbeat waiting to begin again. Sometimes miracles don't roar with thunder or blaze across the sky. Sometimes they arrive quietly, in the bond between a wounded soldier and a loyal dog who refused to forget. What happened between Luke and Blitz wasn't science, and it wasn't chance. It was grace, a reminder that God's hand still moves gently in the broken corners of our lives, stitching together the pieces we thought were lost forever. Maybe you felt like Luke once did, carrying scars no one sees, wondering if peace will ever find you again. But miracles are never far. They wait in small acts of loyalty, in forgiveness, in the love that endures long after fear fades. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and what miracle you're still waiting for. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our journey of faith, love, and redemption. May the Lord bless you wherever you are tonight. May He guide your path, calm your storms, and remind you that even in silence, you are seen, you are loved, and you are never alone. Amen.